Hello everyone, welcome, and if you've been a long-time viewer of this channel, you most likely know that I originally started out talking about the story of different video games. In particular, I talked about Blue Archive's story and why I thought it was amazing in terms of characterization and the actual storytelling that each character had. The game excelled in making each character feel unique and have different personality traits that you can sort of pinpoint and call out at random. If you have a character that you really enjoyed in that game, you could name at least one personality trait or one thing about them that you liked. And I still do stand by that opinion. I think Blue Archive still does excel in characterization. I think it's better than pretty much the other main gacha games that I played on this channel. And while I'm still attempting to find different ones to play and different variety games to play, I do want to say that if you're looking for a game with unique characters and a decent story, I recommend Blue Archive. I like the way it separates its story from its gameplay, but this isn't just about Blue Archive. I took the time out of my day to actually read the story of certain gacha games. I went over the story of Genshin Impact and into the character quest and into the actual character voice lines. I went over the story of Arknights and the characters that I actually enjoyed, and I have thoughts. But I also want to talk about story in general and why I think it's an incredibly important part of a lot of games that is sometimes neglected and other times done really poorly. Keep in mind, everything in this video will be my own personal opinion, and I understand that you can disagree with me, and that's fine. The point of this video is just to get my thoughts out there. If you have different ones, leave them in the comment section down below. Now, keep in mind, this entire topic can be heavily dependent on how you prefer your stories told. If you like watching cutscenes and beautifully animated story scenes, or even maybe you like seeing character models on screen, that can be an entirely different scene than seeing a lot of text. And depending on who you are and what game you're playing, or maybe what's happening on screen or what characters are involved, you may be more interested or less interested. So understand that where I'm coming from is with the games that I like to play, I do like seeing story scenes happen on screen through cutscene. But if that's not the case, then I'm obviously going to be more inclined to pay attention in the event that it's a character I like. I've mentioned in Blue Archive videos that I paid attention when Nezuna was on screen, and that's what dragged me into the game then. With Arknights, I didn't care about any of the characters that were shown on screen. So after I got bored and ran out of sanity, I decided to read through a lot of the storylines, whether that be the character profiles themselves or information I could find elsewhere. And I've done this for a fair few gacha games. Ultimately, my opinions are this. The vast majority of interest that kind of procs up to me in a gacha game comes from the very beginning. Tower Fantasy, as I mentioned, messed this up because it killed off a character basically in the first 10 minutes when I didn't know a single thing about that entity. As a result, I have no reason to care. And it's very difficult to drag me into a game because a lot of times, a lot of games will just start off with text and introducing you to the world. I understand the point of it, but the problem is if I haven't, or I'm just trying to get to the gameplay, then I really have no reason to care. This is further augmented by the fact that I usually, in most cases, can skip the scenes, and if I can skip it, I probably will to try and get to the fun part. So when reviewing Arknight's story, the characters themselves that you unlock, and the interesting information that you gain over time due to trust rank increase, or the trust increase just from using them in general or having them in your base, it's interesting to read on some levels. Don't get me wrong, I would prefer having something else centered around them, and I understand that events sometimes do that. But if I'm just talking about the character profiles that are available for the units that I have in-game, then it's more difficult to find myself interested in what's happening on screen. To keep this in mind, I read the story and the profile for Golden Glow. She was the first 6-star of my account, I believe, and I accidentally got her, so I decided that it was important enough for me to read her since I actually quite like the design of the character. The artist on Twitter is wonderful, and the character story didn't disappoint. It's a good short story. It's nothing to write home about, but from what I've heard, it's one of the nicer stories in Arknights because everyone else is kind of depressing. So I did appreciate that. But what I have an issue with, and this isn't just in Arknights, this is in many games, is that it's incredibly difficult to attach myself to a unit if I don't have any particular moment to attach them to. It's not like I've met these characters in game. It's not like I get any scenes that particularly play out with them. It's not like in many cases I get to see them express any personality traits. So yes, the model for Golden Glow looks pretty, and the actual story that you get there is nice. And I understand that you or anyone else who played Arknights for longer may individually have more instances in this happening in which, oh hey, there was an event that I missed or something else. And I understand that, that's cool. But from what I know, and what I've experienced, and what I've seen, the stories are nice, but I have nothing that really makes me want to care about this character in the slightest. And as I keep comparing it to, Blue Archive has relationship storylines, Genshin Impact has character quest lines, or character stories, or even hangouts, really. And while I'm aware that there is an Arknights anime, I am not really interested in the anime, and ultimately I'm evaluating this story based on what's available in the game, and not what's externally out there that I have to find. And I think that story is obviously going to be a very easy way not only to get individuals into your game, but also to get them to care about the characters they're seeing on screen. I think that a good story can actually entice individuals to pull for characters more often simply because of the presence they have in the story, the personality they showed, and what events transpired. A bad story could do the opposite. You don't really have a reason to care for the characters other than the fact that they're either really strong or look good. And relying solely on design and gameplay feats is a bit of a difficult thing because yeah, it's going to obviously get or force individuals to pull for the strongest units if they like them and their playstyle. But as a result, it funnels individuals down a path in which they're likely going to have the either strongest units or units that aren't good enough, or that they don't care about. And I don't think that's a recipe for success long term because it gives individuals nothing to really attach to or any reason to play long term. Ultimately, if you don't care about the units you have, why would you come back? If you don't care about the units you have, why would you build them up? If you don't care about the units you have, why would you do anything other than what is strictly necessary or required to beat the basic content in the game? Meanwhile, as an example, I liked Golden Glow's design. I liked her story. She was my first E1 character, and she's, I think at this point, my most heavily invested character in Arknights. In Blue Archive, Azuna is my most heavily invested character in Blue Archive. She almost has maxed out talents or skills. In Genshin Impact, Raiden, Zhongli, Venti, Ganyu, and Xiao are my favorite characters, and they have either their signature weapons or are heavily invested to the extent in which you're either getting constellations or getting talent increases. Whether you choose to focus on the strongest units, units you find cute, or units you solely liked because of their character design or their character storyline, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's incredibly important to have a good character just based off the fact that it could get somebody else to pull for them. It could get somebody else into them. Because relying on design is difficult. Because characters aren't for everybody and designs aren't universally appealing. But I want to hear your stories. I want to hear what brought you into either Arknights, Genshin, Blue Archive, or whatever your favorite gacha game is. I want to legitimately understand, what was it, one particular character? Was it an event? Was it the actual story that you got into later on? Or did you start from the beginning and get really drawn in by the first couple of scenes that were thrown at you? It takes me a while to get into certain games. I think in Genshin, it took me until Zhongli to actually care. So I'm not saying, I was dragged into Genshin Impact story from the very beginning. No, I was dragged into the couple hours after I started the game. So I want to hear what yours are. Did you get drawn in by one character, by multiple, by an event, by something else you saw externally, or what the case was? I do intend to give my thoughts on Arknight's story as a whole, but I kind of want to get to chapter 10 before I do that, or at least much later on, because as of right now, chapter 4, I don't feel like it's fair to evaluate the story just yet. Or episode 4, it's chapter, episode, doesn't matter, whatever. And I want to kind of go through an event to kind of see what those are like in terms of the story substance they give you. However, with all of this being said, these were just my opinions. If you disagree, cool beans, but YouTube removed the dislike button, so you only have one option left. Once again, I am still reeling from failing the exam, so these videos don't really have a point. But tomorrow's video, expect a more story-based content with a bit more of a script and outline, because I'm going to tell you about my favorite games of all time, and specifically my favorite stories in a game. If you like this video, leave a like down below, consider subscribing to the channel, and join the Discord server down below. I hope to see you next time. If you enjoyed, well, I'm glad. Either way, my name has been Anaki, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.